Didn't you also get an article in the Source, October 1990? Can you speak on that?
Yeah. And so once we made it to New York, like, I mean, it was funny. Like, my uncle was telling us, like, yo, don't look like out of towners. Y'all are young. You don't want to get robbed. You going to catch the bus to Port Authority. And, we were like looking up, oh, 29th Street is real close to Port Authority. We're like calling up, trying to find a cousin or somebody that lives in New
Is
York that
it
we could
is this
stay
sort of
with.
like Coming to America with Eddie Murphy?
But then the funny thing too is because we wanted to make an impression, so we had dashikis and we had our beads on and everything. My uncle's like, nah, throw a coat on. Like, don't come out the bus looking like that. Like, people are gonna just prey on you and be like, food. So he was like, just keep it low key. Um, and so we got directions to where we're going, and took the Greyhound bus to New York. Went to Red Alert Productions offices and met Gangsta Limpin in the flesh. Rest in peace to him too. Um, I met him for the first time and sat and listened to the music. And since we'd had time to like refine our concepts, our themes, and kind of have our talking points together, and then had also upstate New York gone into some studios, to get some quality recordings and everything. We sat down and listened, and he was like, yeah, I'm really digging what I'm hearing. I really want to do something with y'all. And he said he was working Red Alert Productions, but he was on the way to go to LA to start this record label, Hollywood Basic. And I'm not sure if he had the name in mind then, but he was going to start a record label in Hollywood. That's all we needed to hear. We're like, I bet. Like, he's like, I don't know if, once I get settled, I'll see what I can do for y'all. He's like, but I really want to move forward with something. He's like, and if I can get them to come along, we'll make it happen. And then through those conversations and discussions, he was like, yeah, I'm really cool with the folks at the Source. I'm a writer there too. He was a, columnist at the Source. He was like, it would be real cool to have like you guys write an article about hip hop in Zimbabwe. Cause just the same way we'd tell him about it, he was like, everybody needs to hear about what y'all are doing. That's a real cool story. And so we're like, oh, dope. What do we need to do? And they're like, basically just talk about your experiences. So we went over to the Source offices. We met with I know we definitely talked to John Schechter. I'm not sure. I know Dave and all of them were in there, and I know we met Dave Mays over the years and stuff. But talked about kind of what the article should be about, what they were looking for. So we went and wrote some drafts. Sent them. They were like, okay, we want y'all to talk some more about like specifically events and kind of what things that are different things that are happening. So we did that. And it was cool because this is a magazine we've been getting, right, in the mail, like, golden commodity, the holy grail of hip hop. And then to be like, hey, you guys get to write an article. And at first I was thinking, okay, like a quick 100-word like blurb, like, yeah, hip hop in Zimbabwe. And they're like, nah, we want, and I forget the word count, but if cats see the article, it's like multi-page. They're like, do y'all have pictures? I have pictures of my boys posing.
Right.
So, they owe me still to this day because I'm like, I put y'all in the Source, like 1991. That was 91, right? I'm like, I put y'all in the Source. Y'all was just in my front yard posing and look. But, we didn't even have press photos. I mean, we weren't even signed at that time and stuff. So we were in Harlem, went to a photographer. I'm there in my jam shorts looking all crazy. Just had him take a picture and use that for the article.
Was Hollywood Basic your first choice of label? Did you shop your demo at all without any other labels?
Man, it was our only choice of label. Cause like, I mean, when I won't lie, like when we came over, it was basically like, we've got this opportunity. Like, we know somebody in the music business. We didn't know anybody else and we hadn't lived here. So it wasn't, and I didn't have any peoples in the music business. So I couldn't even be like, yo, who else is, whatever, like, that kind of stuff. And Dave was also kind of mentoring us and like telling us, okay, well, this is kind of what we're going to need to do. This is how it's going to work. This is, what you guys need to do. So we didn't even really know too much about like how the whole process, how the record industry structure worked. There wasn't really an industry structure in Zimbabwe that we could have even modeled it like.
Right.
And so, this was kind of like our all or none shot with Hollywood Basic. So we didn't even really know like the shopping process. I remember when we went to meet Dave with Red Alert Productions, the only experience background I had, and I mean, just realized this, I was like 18 or maybe turning 18 that year, was EPMD's Please Listen to My Demo. So it was like, okay, they listen to the demo, and if he likes it, we'll look at each other and be like, where do we sign? And start laughing or whatever. That was all we knew. Like, we ain't know, we had no managers or any representatives or anything like that. And I was also going to go to college too. So it's kind of like, hey, do we have this opportunity? How's it going to work? What are they going to be able to do? And he wasn't like, yes, I'm definitely going to sign you. He's like, I'm super interested. He did say, like, as you meet people, don't sign nothing. Like, because a lot of times, people be like, oh, yeah, y'all just sign this here. So he's like, don't sign nothing. But, yeah, that was kind of like our only pathway at that point.
I had Prince Poetry on last week from Organized Confusion. So that was your label mates. Were you there first, or were they there first?
I believe I know they were the first out the gate. And I think Dave wanted to get settled with so Organized, the Lifers group.
Right.
And I forget if he had anybody else. I think he might have done some of the like Queen remixes and all that stuff during that time. But yeah, they were there first. And but label mates. And I remember him telling us that he had a group called Organized that was going to come out. And then when he got, set up, he also wanted to like kind of, rep for us or whatever, kind of like sell us to the label. You know what I mean? Because it's a lot of decision makers and bureaucracy and like what they want to do and do they think it's marketable and all of that stuff. So before we even signed officially, they got like a demo budget. Because he was like, well, I want to put y'all in the studio with some New York producers and get some of that head nod, get some of that real dope beat behind what y'all are doing, incorporate, kind of the vision we had of incorporating kind of the African influences musically, and, percussion wise and that kind of stuff. And he wanted to, use that then to go to the label and be like, this is what the record would sound like, versus, well, I got a rough demo and it sounds like this and this is what it could be. So kind of make a clear vision of what it could be, firm concept. And as we started talking, one of the things I think he said, or in discussions, it was like, well, there's a lot of brothers groups at that time, right? And it's like, if y'all are the brothers from the mother, it's a catchy name, but people might just think y'all are just some other New York cats or whatever, if you say Zimbabwe Legit, it's like, oh, y'all are the official cats, like y'all coming from the motherland. And especially at that time, being one of the first coming out, like they thought it was important to make that stamp. So put the country on the back and just, ran with it.
Right. Can you take us back to some of those sessions and some of the producers you work with, like Mr. Long and Cadence and DJ Shadow? Yeah,
so the initial demo sessions, a lot of the tracks, he had a crew called Solid Productions that I think out of Denmark that had been producing for the Lifers group. So he had a bunch of beats from them that we went through and deciding, what we were going to rock on. And so we started, going through those and picking out beats and coming up with ideas and concepts. And then they brought us to Calliope Studios, which is a famed studio, where like Stet and De La, Jungle Brothers and folks had recorded. So the spirit was with us. So we went in there and cut demos, kind of taking the ideas we had and then like working with the, kind of the heightened, doper beats that he had in his stash. And then he said, so there's this producer that I know from this group that's coming out called the Black Sheep, and he's dope, and I've talked to him about y'all, and I think I want to put y'all together with him. I think that would be a good combination. I was like, okay, cool. So he brought us on one of our trips in New York to Mercury Records, and we met the Black Sheep. We met a bunch of execs over at, I think it was Mercury Records or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So he brought us in there and, kind of told them about what we were trying to do. And we talked to Mr. Long and we kind of build. And he's like, yeah, Dave was telling me about you. And we kind of, chatted about kind of what we were trying to do and what we were looking for. And so the session with him was real cool too, because we were like formulating. A lot of the other stuff had been like pre-recorded. And it's like this, it's obviously going to be, rearranged once you drop rhymes to it. But with him, we were building from scratch. And a big thing we were talking about was like, okay, yeah, everybody's talking about Africa and we got the medallions. And then at some point it started turning into more of a fad, people rocking beads. And it's like, well, do you really know what it represents? Or are you just fronting? A lot of people are obviously representing the real. Other people are just kind of jumping on the bandwagon. And so we're like, yeah. And he's like, oh, that's dope. That's dope. And he's like, you know what? We should call it to bead or not to bead. And we're like, oh, that's dope. That's dope. And so we had like the concept mapped out, but like he helped, formulate what the hook would be. And then I don't know if it was in the original version that came out on the CD, but when we did the reissue, we included a piece of the skit where he's like, hey, yo, what's going on? What you rocking, man? And we're like, these are beads, beads. It's like, yo, can I rock them too? And, kind of tripping like that. And he also added like a crazy feature that made To Beat or Not to Be like my favorite song. And I was always pushing like, yo, this should be the joint. Because when it starts off, it's like, yo, check it out, drop it. And it goes, hey, ho, hey. And he added that little nicety in there
Right.
to hype it up and stuff and make it like that head nod East Coast stomp type song. And so sitting there watching him, and I was telling him before we did this interview, like, yo, I'm doing this interview, like a session with you still to this day like resonates, because that was also like our first time with the like 48 track boards, kind of the analog boards before stuff went digital, and just seeing him in the Akai sampler or whatever they had, and like looping it was like 125th Street Congress by Weather Report is like the basis of that song. So let's listen to him drop the needle and grab snippets of that or whatever and like put it together. And that was like one of the first times of me observing like, an established producer, up and coming producer, put together a song, you know what I mean? And like piece all the pieces together and add in the drum drops and the fills. And then, they were mixing. Him and Scott Harding were on the board. Scotty Hard, shout out. And they were like, punching in and punching out the different parts for the mix, manually before the flying fader automation. So just watching all that unfold and just seeing how it came together. And then obviously we went in the booth and laid our rhymes. It came out. Like, okay, hit this part a little different. Oh, you went too high there. Or like, okay, do some doubles, and just working through that. That was like real fun. Just cutting that for like the demos, like we felt real cool. That was cool. And then we had to go back in once he brought it to Hollywood Basic, and they gave it the stamp and the blessing, and be like, okay, let's do this. We kind of went back into the studio, and they had Solid Productions with us this time. Creating the tracks, elaborating on them to make them like specific to the rhymes. Mr. Long came back to lay, To Beat or Not to Bead. He also did scratches on Doing Damage.
Right.
I don't know if that's known fact or unknown fact, but like he was nice with the cuts, man. He did the cuts on the Lifers group, where he's cutting audio too. That's how it is in prison. And so they were like, yeah, we should get him to do cuts on your record. And I was like, yeah, we got a dope, vocal sample to cut, Zimbabwe and all of that. So it was real eye-opening, real informative, because again, we hadn't been around all of that stuff in the past at that level, right? With the
right.
major label budget, producers, sound engineers, seeing that and experiencing that. So it was a great learning experience too, just in the process of recording and, kind of how to lay the song out, how to arrange it, do all of that.
When you guys finished the project and handed it in to Hollywood Basic, what was their reaction to the project?
They were excited. I know Dave was like amped. Like everybody was like super excited. Like, yo, we have something. A lot of the feedback we got too from like early press that they said they hear it. They said, yo, people think this is it. Like, this is something. Y'all definitely are different. They're like, that's half the battle in the music industry is like the sound-alikes, right? And I was like, y'all don't sound like nobody else. It's distinctive. As soon as somebody hears it, they know it's not anything they've heard before. So they seemed like real excited. There was a lot of like process and paperwork, right? Because they had other records that needed to come out. different timing, and obviously we had to work out agreements. But again, it was our first time out, so as far as we were concerned, everything was regular. You know what I mean? Like, we didn't know if it was the usual length of time, or longer or shorter, because we hadn't done it before.
So when the album was finally released, what was the reaction like from the hip hop community?
So from our perspective, like, people were digging it. Like, people were like into it. Like, we got a lot of positive feedback, especially from like cultural circles, where people are like, yes, this is that, authentic content. It's educational, but it's still fun. You know what I mean? It still rocks. It's still got, you can dance to it. It's still got that head bob, but it's still saying something. A lot of, I don't know, I guess the air around it though was like just political, and not political as in politics, but like record industry type stuff. And so it's like, do stations have the record? Are they going to play the record? Who's promoting the record? And I guess thinking back in retrospect, but like, we didn't know what to do in terms of like, how should it be promoted? We figured, hey, we did a record, we turned it into the label, and now we sit back and wait. And so, we'd hear people be like, oh yeah, is your record out? We'll be like, yeah, it's been out. They're like, where can we find it? Like, in the store. They'll be like, I went to the store, they don't have it, they don't know about it, you should go tell them. They're like, go tell them? Okay, I'll go tell. I remember the Tower Records on Broadway, in the Lower East Side. We go over and be like, yo, do y'all have Zimbabwe Legit? We perpetrate like that wasn't us. And they'd be like, Zimbabwe Legit? What is that? And we'd be like, it's a new record. And they'd be like, go over and look in the Z's. And we look in the Z's under hip hop, and it wouldn't be there. And then we go over to world music, and it would be there. And we'd be like, why is it in world music? They're like, oh, it's international music or whatever. It was not a picture of two rappers on the cover like this, right? So I guess they were like, they looked at it. I don't know if you can see this, but they look at it and be like, Zimbabwe Legit. Oh, okay, that's a great international world beat record, which isn't a bad thing, but if people are looking for it and can't find it, and then kind of like radio, college radio, we'd be at like the new music seminar and stuff like that, and people would be like, yo, we haven't gotten your record, can you get us the record? I'm like, all right, I'll call them and ask them to send it to you. So there was a lot of kind of disappointment, I guess, around that, just because not knowing how to make that happen, right? And big mistake we made, and it was not for lack of trying, we didn't have management representation, and we also didn't have somebody knowledgeable about the industry to be like, okay, here's what you need to do. All right, I'm gonna get on the label. All right, here are stations that I know are interested. Let's make sure the label gets some of these. For us, it was just kind of hit or miss. We'd run into people that would tell us, we'd call up stations that we knew. When we were in the New York area, we'd do the circuit. We'd go to WBAI and talk to, DJs that we knew, or get asked to be invited onto shows and that kind of stuff. Or tell people, like, if they're like, yo, I don't have the record, I'd be like, I'll send it to you. Like, where are you? That kind of stuff.
Can you take us back to some of the tours and maybe a favorite tour lineup and memory around this time?
So I think for us, like, the most memorable thing was, again, when we came out the gate, because you got to remember this was like all new, cats coming from Zimbabwe and being like, yo, what's going on? And so I know early on, Hollywood Basic did a distribution agreement with a label out in Japan, or a distribution company, I should say, out in Japan. And so they had us hop out there with Organized Confusion to rock out, kind of introduce the label, to the Japanese audience, and also, make the connections, and then, basically perform and, big up the groups. So that was real cool, because Prince Poe and Pharoah Monch are definitely skilled artisans of the craft of hip hop. So getting to watch them, and be around them and observe how they got down and how they controlled the crowd and rocked the house was real cool. Watch how they did sound check, and, how they set it off, and, kind of what they were asking about and asking for. So that was cool. And just being in like a whole new different country and being like, yo, we're going to rock a show for these folks that may not even know who we are yet, but we're going to let them know, you know what I mean? We're going to do our thing, and, be in Japan rocking lyrics in Indebele, right? And
Right.
doing, it's like a pretty unique experience. So that was real fun. Like definitely, just experiencing just a whole different realm for us, like kind of on the job training, you know what I mean? Like trial by fire, doing our thing. And we'd been performers too, so it's not like we were new to the stage, you know what I mean? We knew what it meant to connect with the audience, to rock. And we were both dancers too, so we had our little interactive routines back and forth, to get the crowd more involved. So that was a really cool experience. I think the next time I kind of had an enriching experience like that, we'd have to fast forward to like 2000. And this was post Zimbabwe Legit, post Hollywood Basic. But we went to France with a bunch of groups from New York. And then I think the largest cat on that bill was DJ Spooky, and it was like a transition from 99 to 2000. So you remember how that whole Y2K
Right.
craziness was, but it was like it was like a festival. So it was cool because it was like a whole bunch of shows in an area and different groups performing, and we did a lot of cross pollination, if you will, of okay, this band is gonna rock, and then one of the MCs is gonna split with the band, and then we're gonna do a show here, and then in the afternoon we'll do some workshops, and then we'll perform again. So it was real cool again, just being in a foreign land, rocking out for different crowd, letting people see it, you know what I mean, letting them feel your energy, and also overcoming that barrier of like, yo, we're in a foreign country, but we're still gonna let that our lyrics, and performance resonate.
When the project finally did its thing, how did it perform throughout the world?
So I think it did okay. I mean, I think it got a lot of critical acclaim. There was always the distribution woes where it'd be like, oh, this place doesn't have it. I think Hollywood Basic was distributed by like WEA or something, or the Electra Group. And I remember the story I was told from people at the label were like, well, we're second in line, right? They distribute their stuff, and then our stuff kind of comes along on the truck. And so if people can't find it, we got to contact WEA and be like, okay, is it present over here, present over there? So I think the impact was muted a little bit, unfortunately. And but I know the folks that heard it, listened to it, and felt it really responded. I think it took a while, even for myself, to kind of realize the impact. Because again, you flash back to the early 90s. It's not like you can go online and be like, yo, my new album just dropped, and you have someone from Croatia being like, yo, that's dope, I just checked it. Like, you hear what you hear from who you know and who you see and stuff. So a lot of it was like us running around like frustrated, like, yo, how come my record's not in the stores? Or DJ said they don't have the record. And, meanwhile, critical writers are saying, yo, this is real dope. This is a great record. This is impact. And then we were trying our darndest to get it distributed in Zimbabwe. And we're like, yo, it's only right? You got a record called Zimbabwe Legit. It's pretty unique in what it is. You should probably distribute it in Zimbabwe and South Africa, whatever, the African continent.
Right.
And we couldn't get like an answer on like how to make that happen. Again, it came down to like, we'll call this person in the UK, and I'm calling long distance, on my phone, before Sally's, and talking to somebody who's like, who are you now? What do you want? You want me to do what? Well, why
Right.
don't you talk to Hollywood Bay? I'm like, they told me to call you. I said, well, actually, I don't deal with that. Call so-and-so. They're not here till next. So we were running around chasing our tail a lot. And I'm like, yo, I'm trying to get y'all money. Like, this is, I mean, it benefits me, but it benefits you. Distribute the record in Zimbabwe. Why not? I know
Right.
people there heard it though. Anecdotally through feedback, people tell me like, yo, when that joint dropped, like, it meant a lot. Like it definitely had an impact. And so it was cool just realizing and recognizing that. And when we meet folks, in the industry too, like I know you've talked to Drez, but I remember meeting him at like a Hollywood Basic event, and he's like, yo, that joint y'all did is dope. And I was like, oh, the joint with Mr. Long? He's like, nah, the joint y'all produced too. That joint was hot. And I'm like, oh, he's like, the African Symphony. I'm like, oh, okay, word. So, getting accolades and respect like that from your peers means a lot as well. And like
Absolutely.
whenever we do interviews, like all the journalists and stuff we'd be talking to would be like, yo, that record, you know what I mean, from Rap Pages to like Herb magazine to I mean, we were in Word Up and, you know, all places and spaces, and people were like, yo, that record definitely has impact. Like, y'all are definitely doing something cool. So that was good to hear. It was just frustrating because there's always like, there's so much more potential, and you know that. And I mean, I think every artist probably feels that way. Like, oh, my record is, but I mean, we were just hearing such crazy feedback on like how impactful it was, and we're like, yo, why can't we? And then we started after, you know, because labels are super patient. So like after a little while, they saw, you know, okay, you know, you're like not getting that warm and fuzzy feeling anymore. And
Right.
it's like, y'all aren't done pushing this, you know what I mean? I've been working
Right.
all my life for this. Like, y'all need to put your backs into it. The demand is out there.
Can you hold that thought? Instagram's going to kick us off in like 30 seconds. I'm going to log off and then join me in about 2 minutes. I'm going to log back on so we can hear the rest of the story.
All right, sounds cool.
So everybody, I'm going to log off. Instagram is about to end this in like 20 seconds, and then me and Dumi will be right back with part 2. I'll see you in about a minute, Dumi.
Indeed.
All right.